So once again, thank you so much for taking time to come up for this webinar. My name is Daryl, and I am proud to be your host for this 1 hour. And with me today, I have two very distinguished speakers with us to just share their knowledge and expertise and whatever that they have learned and experienced over the years of business and all that. Very, very excited for them to have them share with us today, to share with us what they have already prepared with us. So with us today are Raymond from StartupX as well as Constantine from Osome. Maybe I'll just give you a bit of time for the speakers to introduce themselves first. Raymond, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Daryl. Thanks for the intro, and happy to be here. Thanks for the Osome team for having me here. So just a quick introduction. I'm one of the co-founders and COO at StartupX. So we are an innovation venture and startup enabler. So we run many innovation programs and startup programs in the ecosystem. So throughout the years of doing this, we have worked with a lot of startups. We've seen a lot of things. So happy to share my experience here today. And also, prior to this, I was a startup founder, and I worked on a few ideas before. So happy to share once again. And yeah, thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Thanks, Raymond. I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us. The questions are just amazing, right? Cons, how about you want to share a bit about yourself and a bit about Osome as well?
Yeah. So cons is something people in Osome came up with in the last few months, and I was like, oh, where does that come from? But anyways, Constantine is my name. I'm German. I have a background in accounting, finance, and consulting. And after a bunch of studying, a bunch of accounting and finance, and a bunch of consulting, I realized that hey, it's enough theory, it's enough slides. I want to do something real. There was summer of 2014, I moved to Malaysia back then from Germany, which was quite a big jump, I have to say. I joined an accelerator called Asia Venture Group back then. We started a bunch of companies. The first one was, and it's still around, it's called Happy Fresh. It's a grocery delivery service in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. I was the CFO there and the CEO for Malaysia for about a year. After this, the company graduated and moved to Jakarta, where, as I stayed in Malaysia, co-founding another company from the same accelerator called iPrice. Back in 2015, there was quite a few e-commerce stores coming up, and it was really a bit confusing to navigate all of them. And our mission was to help people find the best deals across all those new e-commerce stores all across Southeast Asia. I did that for 2.5 years as the COO, and then about 4 years ago, I joined Osome here in Singapore. It's quite interesting actually, because when I was running Happy Fresh and later iPrice, accounting, corp sec services and such were, for me, I was in charge of that because of my accounting finance background. I was the lucky or unlucky one to do that. And people were just shoving that off to me, and for me it wasn't God given. It has to be rather painful, rather annoying, old school, on paper, a little boring maybe sometimes. And I sat down with Victor, our CEO, or socially sometime before joining the company, and after that, after a 2.5-hour lunch, which was supposed to be just 1 hour, I knew that it doesn't have to be boring, it doesn't have to be annoying. It can be around the entrepreneur, around helping entrepreneurs to really drive positive change instead of holding them down with compliance, with accounting, with all that. I want to be so bold and say boring stuff that we sometimes have to do. And that's what Osome's mission is, to accelerate positive change in the world by empowering entrepreneurs. So I'm very happy to help and empower entrepreneurs. Raymond was mentioning that I was helping StartupX some time ago by mentoring some of the startup ideas that were coming out of there, and that's really something that I really enjoy doing. I've gathered over the last 7.5 years quite a bit of startup experience, and I'll be very happy to pass on as much as I can.
Yeah. Like the saying goes, it's better to learn from others' experience or mistakes than to learn from yours.
That is 100% correct. That is 100%. Yeah. But it's really, really hard, You
Yeah.
always end up, at least for me, you end up like second guessing those experiences. Maybe he wasn't thinking, or maybe they were not considering. They were, and they did, and still, it's a good thing to learn.
Yeah.
That's why we have today. That's why the people here today are privileged to have the both of you to share your ideas, share the insights that you have, so that they may avoid the very same pitfalls that you guys might have experienced. Not so nice ones, but yeah, it's always good to pass on experience. All right, thank you so much. So, what's going to happen? All right, okay, we're going to jump straight into the questions. I know you guys have asked a lot of very good questions that we're accumulating as you registered. We have gathered that, we have tabulated that, and we are here to answer them, right? But some basic house rules first, okay? At the bottom right, you should be able to see like a chat box. Anything you want, just feel free to put in the chat, right, to encourage the speakers. If they're sharing great stuff, right, just put it there as well. There's a questions tab as well, and you can key in any questions that you might have thought of throughout the entire session, right? And the last 15 20 minutes, we will dedicate that time to answer any questions that might have come in on the spot. And the speakers today will be more than happy to answer them. Right. So without further ado, all right, let's jump straight in. So the first question is one of the most common questions that have been asked when I was just tabulating the questions, which is how does one find the right business idea? Right. I mean, Raymond, probably you might have heard of this question a lot of times, and Cons, I mean, having startup experience, you might have thought of this many, many times or so. So how does one find the right business idea? Is there even such a thing as a right business idea? Raymond, do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah. So I think, to put it in simple terms, right, the best way to get good ideas is to get lots of ideas, and that involves getting a lot of bad ideas. So you have to work through a lot of bad ideas. And I don't know about everyone, but I come up with a lot of ideas, but a lot of them are easily forgotten. You're taking a shower, you think about something, you think about why the Uber ride wasn't that nice, and maybe I could create something else, or you think about the problem you had today. Most of the time we forget about it. So I think that the first step is really about building that muscle to come up with ideas, and a way to also store them, right? It could be as simple as like just taking notes on your iPhone notes app. I use Notion, like I have one page full of ideas, like and just review them, right? Like most of them are going to be bad ideas, and you got to understand what is a good idea and what's a bad idea, because everyone's different. So yeah, that's what I noticed. I have a few frameworks for how to think about ideas, how to come up with new ideas, but I can go to that later. But maybe you want to see anything else from Cons?
I think for me, the more important function is discarding ideas, because it sounds, maybe I'm too German about that, but it's really that you will always come across some ideas, and I've seen many people trying out something that after 2 minutes of back of the envelope calculations doesn't seem to really add up. Someone asked me once, what do I think of an idea where for founders that have founded crypto startups, that if they die, the crypto is like, how often does that happen even, right? So how big is your market? And then people stop there. So that for me is kind of a good way of discarding ideas, like how big is the market, how many people want it, and if you feel like there's not enough people who want it, then probably you're onto something. So that's important. I think for me, generally, the 3 startups I have so far worked with and co-founded were about real needs that I personally had, and I think this is the easiest thing to generate ideas. Raymond, you said like about the Uber ride that didn't really kind of work for you. This is really something that worked for me, right? I had like a bit of a pain with my accounting and CorpSec. Now I'm doing accounting and CorpSec. I had really problem buying anything online when I first moved to Southeast Asia, and iPrice was my answer back then, right? Not mine alone, but that motivated me as well to work on it, because I felt like we needed that help. With Happy Fresh the same, right? How do I get groceries around here? It's hard. Well, maybe we should think of that. And then the most of the ideas that are generated that way go away, because maybe it's you only having that problem. maybe that problem is already solved and you just don't know about it. So a bit of Googling helps. But generally, solve your problems first. It's really hard to solve problems you have no idea about because you've never experienced them.
Yep.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Cons, really like what you shared about like putting it personal, like solve your own problems first before going out before like deciding again. And the part that you mentioned about discarding ideas, right? That you how do you discard ideas was really you check out like how big the market is, for example. Is this something even people want in the first place? So that actually links me to my next question, which is really what kind of research does one really need to do in order to figure out if the idea works or not? Like it could be a great idea, right? But you say, it could be right now in the market, nobody's looking for it, even though it can be a great idea. So along that line, what other research would one need to have or need to do before they can even start deciding that this is a good idea or not?
We are slaves of our background, I guess. I have a background in a lot of Excel. So what I do is, and that may not work for everyone. What I do is I open an Excel and I write a formula by which the company works, right? So for example, something as simple as what is important for, let's say, Osome, right? It's important how many companies are out there, how many companies are started each year, and what kind of revenue you can ultimately generate from those companies, right? It's very straightforward stuff, right? And then you say like, okay, well, that's very straightforward. 3-4 questions, and I need to multiply those numbers, and then I'll figure out what the market size is first, right? The second part, and you can Google all of those things, and you'll find 3, 4, 5 sources. You find the middle value, or you find the highest, lowest, and you multiply, and you have like a from to. And if this is $1,000, then it's probably too small. If it's $3 billion, you probably overlooked something. Or there's a bunch of competition in there, and then that's the next step, right? Look at the competition. Who is already in there? What is it, like a blue ocean or red ocean? Is it something where you can just start surfing, or will you have to fight all them sharks, right? So that's again one of the other things to consider. So that would be the very basic point, and I think that's by that time you're already 95% of your ideas are gone. But the good ones are still around, and that's when it gets really interesting.
Wow, thanks for that. Yeah, Excel will work. Not my cup of tea. Yeah, not for everybody. But yeah, Raymond, do you have anything to add on to that as well?
So a lot of people say ideas are trash and every execution is everything. But at this stage, right, idea is everything because you haven't started executing. So what you choose to work on is actually very important. Like what you mentioned about the market size or the unit economics. If you're going to work on something that doesn't make sense or have too small a market size, then is it worth giving up your high-paying job at Apple or Google and doing this for the next 5 to 10 years of your life, right? So I think this is the part where you need to evaluate your ideas well, market potential, and even the profit. I know nobody thinks about profit at this stage, but what's the profit potential of this idea? And then the next part is whether you are passionate about it, whether you have interest in it, whether sometimes it's just the interest and passion that will pull you through the tough times, and that's something to think about. And one last one, I heard this from, I can't remember who, but sometimes it's good to look at the chance of success. Not everyone is a 18-year-old leaving school, just gonna try and fail. It's good to also, try to think about what's the chance of success. Of course, nothing is given. You don't want to be doing something that is so easy for you. You want to push yourself. But I think looking at the chance of success, and then looking at a few items, weighing it against your individual goals, and evaluating them. I think what's important is to have a framework. I like to think of many things in frameworks where you try to evaluate them using those few criteria, and from there, you go through a lot of ideas. Those that are around would be a pretty good one then.
Well, thanks for sharing. Well, I love what you shared about your chances of success. Yeah, like really a lot of people have like great ideas and all that, but when they really do it, what exactly is the chance of success in that current point of time?
Yeah.
Like it could be the idea is not good, or they're not even in a good place to be in. Like, could be too many things coming in at a point in time.
Correct. Yeah.
That's
It
so
could
good. I
be,
think,
you know, they don't have the skills or the team, or it could be many reasons, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many things that I want to like touch on and just like expand and like
They
touch
go on
on it.
forever.
Yes, yeah, we can go on forever. And there's so many other questions that I really want to ask, because these are all burning questions that the people have. The next part, right? I mean, again, along the lines of having ideas, right? Is once you have ideas, generally you also want to bounce them off to other people, and that brings me to my next point about business mentors. Is looking for business mentor good, or is it, my friends are my business mentors and that's great, because I'm bouncing off ideas off the ground, or what's your take on business mentors? Are they really good? How can they really help? Raymond, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think mentors are really important. Like why we mentioned earlier, it's like people have already gone through the journey. They have already made the mistakes, and learn from them, right? It's free to learn from them, it's definitely something that's valuable, and you can fast track your journey if you actually have the right mentors. But at the same time, you got to weigh the balance, right? Like the other thing is that some people use it as like a means of procrastination. They just speak to mentors. I know a lot because we run Startup Weekend in Singapore. So some people, they just don't want to start working on their idea. They're just too scared, right? And they just keep talking to mentors after mentors after mentors. And obviously people will have different views. So you can, get opinions to know in. Like somebody could say it's a good idea, somebody could say it's a bad idea, and then somebody else would say, why not you work on that other idea? And you can just, get stuck in that loop without ever launching, or just getting stuck in your early stage of building a company. So I think it's really important to have good mentors. One thing I think is also overlooked at this day and age. It can be a one-way mentor. The mentor doesn't need to know that you are following him. So now people are like, it's so accessible. There's Twitter, there's YouTube videos that if you curate them, you can really find really, really high value stuff people are sharing. And it's something that a lot of good founders I know, they follow. Like they find the entrepreneurs in a field that they really respect and they want to learn from, and they just follow them and see their thought process, see the things that they're sharing, and then even join events and stuff and learn from them. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. Cons, what about you? I mean, having 3 startups already, have you had any experience with like business mentors, or is it something that is just like went ahead on your own?
I wouldn't put a kind of a label on it for me so much as mentors. I think for me, I come from the university that I attended in Germany has a lot of startups that came out of it. I mean, Rocket Internet is, I think, the most famous one, but there's plenty more. So what happens then is that a lot of people that I know just from back in the day from my studies have started, sold, defaulted, and all kinds of things that they've done with their startups. And some are experts in one field, some are in others. So I tend to reach out to them without thinking of them as so much as mentors, because I think it's more of a exchange of opinions, right? I call someone up and say like, look, hey, this is something that we've been running into lately. It's a bunch of COOs, for example, that I regularly talk to. It's like, hey, how do you solve it? Like, oh yeah, that was a big pain in the ass, and we did it this and this way, and this one didn't work. Like, oh, that's very interesting. And then this person turns around and says like, oh, but we're right now fixing this problem. Like, oh yeah, we fixed that a year ago. That's how we did it. You should look into it. So this is more of a kind of an exchange than mentoring, but that depends also a little bit on the position you're in. When I just started in my first startup, I was asking a bunch of people who had done it before, without being able to give them much back, right? And after some time, once you are able to give some experience back, it becomes even more interesting, also for the mentors. Until then, what Raymond said. Yeah.
Great. I love your perspective on this. Like, not necessarily like somebody just higher than you, but as long as it's somebody who has walked through that journey, it could be just a peer who had just did the same thing probably like a year ago. Yeah, feel free to exchange ideas and all that. I think that's great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. The next question I have is also similar to what somebody has, a VT, he asked, just in line with what I wanted to ask next is sometimes when you're getting the idea, you don't want to push for it, but like what Raymond said earlier, you probably don't have the expertise for it now. So that's when you start looking for people who can come in to help you. You look for partners, you look for maybe part-timers for a start, probably, but at the very least, a partner, right? So what is important to know or to consider when looking for a partner? Is there something specific that you would encourage people to look out for, or as long as they are on board the idea, all hands on deck, right? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think when it comes to co-founders and getting initial team, you got to like them. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time. You're going to have a lot of arguments. You're going to have a lot of disagreements, and yeah, I think good and bad, right? So that's I think apart from the skill and the ability to do the work, I feel that having knowing them as friends at least. It doesn't mean that if you never known them before, it's not going to work. There's always, a fringe case. But what I've seen is like you need to be able to get along quite well. And a good gauge is that if you've been friends with them, or that they've done, that you know their character, and you know how they actually work under pressure. And I think the trust will definitely build over time. But as a starter, definitely you need people that you get along with.
I agree 100%. I'll say it very 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 brief summary. It's like
Constantine, you were like nodding your head really hard just now when Raymond talking about our friends.
It's like getting married, really. It's just you're gonna have that child together, and it's easier to get married after you've known each other for a while. Yeah. You can of course have an arranged marriage, which can work out and does work out frequently, but I think to avoid a lot of stress, a lot of discontent, it's better to know who you're getting in bed with, and starting that thing.
Right. Well, I was expecting like some really like technical questions or quick technical answer, like, okay, this person needs to have knowledge in this, like cover your weakness and all of that. But just to hear you talk about like it's just really boils down to relationships.
Yeah, it's just the basics, right?
It helps if you cover each other's weaknesses, etc. Just like again maybe I should become a counselor.
Marriage counselor, right?
It's really that. I think it's obviously helpful, and I think we'll talk about fundraising and such further on. But it's really helpful to have someone who is experienced in something you're not experienced in.
Yeah.
If you're very salesy, you probably want someone who's maybe going to take care of things that you have a blind spot for. If you're not salesy, get someone who's a bit salesy, because you're going to need that, because you're going to have to sell your product in your company. So that's how it is. But ultimately, being able to work together trumps everything.
Yeah, for sure. So even my previous startup and the current one, it's for sure a good mix of skill set. Like, of course, there's overlaps, but there are things that I can do that my co-founders can't do. There are things that they can do and I definitely wouldn't be good at. So I think that's also important. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. Then as a follow-up question, also something quite a number of people ask, then is there a good size in terms of like how many people is a recommended size to start a company together? Is like 5 too big, 10 too big, or like 2 too small? Is there like a limit or a cap to this, generally speaking?
I'd put a cap on it. I'd put a hard cap on it. I think 5 is pushing it.
Yeah.
Everything above is really hard. Alone is also pretty hard.
Correct. Yeah, I think alone. Yeah. So it's not that you can't do it alone. There are examples of founders that have done it alone. But usually, I think most people, I would say that if you look at stats, I'm not sure if I get it right, but just assuming what I've seen, maybe 2 to 3 or 4 at most is what happens most of the time. And then you'll see some that are solo founders, but usually I would say solo founders are slightly different, you can tell. and then, those that too many, they have other challenges that they have to deal with, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay, thanks for sharing that. It's good to know. 5 is too many. 3, 4 4 maximum. And that's a
5 is borderline. I think you can make it work. I think if you have some super specific topics where you really need the expertise of all 5 for whatever reason, or if you're trying to build something extremely complex, I would probably expect then this team to be very experienced and know each other very well. I think that's kind of, it can solve it a little bit. But if you have, imagine you have 6, 7 people, and everyone has a strong opinion if they're a founder. Everyone wants to pull in a particular direction, and if you have 3 people pulling,
that is true.
That's one thing, but 6 people.
Yeah.
I think, Konstantin, you pointed out something that I wanted to touch on as well. Since you brought it up, I might as well just ask it again, because this is also in the list of questions. You mentioned that 5, unless you're building something really specific, right? If not, you wouldn't need the 5 people. So this question is pretty similar to this in the aspect where, how fleshed out must your business idea be before you even start building on it? Must it be like 100% out, fleshed out, and in proper detail, or it's okay to start even way smaller than what you envision in mind with your partner, for example? Or at what stage would it be recommended, okay, that's enough, I can start on it, or, it's not enough?
Generally, I believe in kind of very fast iterations. So you learn really quickly from your mistakes. Having said that, I think there are 3, 4 things that you should understand well, most likely before starting. There are exceptions to this rule, but generally I would insist, if someone asks me about should I start now or not, I would insist on understanding the market. I would insist on understanding the go-to-market. How are you going to sell your stuff? How are you going to get your name out there? I would want to understand the unit economics. How am I going to make money off that ultimately? Maybe not tomorrow, and maybe not in a year's time, but ultimately you have to make money off it, else no one's going to give you any. And there is one more that I just can't think of anymore. But those 3 certainly are essential. If the market is too small, if you don't know how to get to your people, to the problem you're solving. Sorry, that's the obvious one, right? What is the problem that you're solving? Is obviously the 4th one, or the first one rather, probably. How big is that market that you're gonna attack now, and how are you going to make money off that? Yeah, that's I would say, like, if you don't know each of those 4, it's probably too early. Going much deeper and having like the perfect solution never works out.
Right. Thanks for sharing that. Then, okay, I mean, the others are too technical. I'm not going to go into that. If not, we will never end by 5 p.m. Right. The next part again is again something similar. So when you are starting to pitch to investors, is there something specific that as part of the experience that you had that investors really do look out for, or apart from what Konstantin has mentioned, right? Like, how do you reach the target market? What's the selling point that you are trying to achieve? Is there something else that really investors will really look out for in your business plan? So what is it, and how can you spruce up the business plan to make it perfect in the eyes of investors? Raymond, maybe you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So for pitching investors, I mean, depends how early or how late you are doing it. I think that the problem that you're solving is really important. You should be able to. You have to be very clear about the problem and the opportunity. It needs to be clear, right? Like, nothing is really too hard that you can't explain it in a few minutes at most. So if your idea is so complex that nobody can understand it, the investors often will not really want to work with you. So I think being very clear about your problem and opportunity, having the clarity is important. Investors always look at market size and potential. That's for sure something that they want to look at. They want to see how much you understand about the market, if you have any insights that maybe people haven't figured out yet, and what's your position around it. And the next thing I would say, investors definitely look at the team. They want to know that you can execute, that you can continue to build on this idea. And the final thing, maybe not so important, but progress, right? Like, if you have not been making any progress for the last 6 months, and then you come and pitch an investor, and they will extrapolate that, and okay, if you haven't done anything in the last 6 months, then what makes me think that you're going to do something in the next 6? So I think the progress is very important. Like, whether you are building your MVP, whether you are validating your idea, or even let's say your launch already, how fast you're growing. Those are things that investors will look at. Yeah, I think that's all I can think of. Anything else?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Constantine, anything else to share?
Generally, I think for me, those are 100% correct.
Yeah.
Each of them. I think one way to think about the market size, which helped me a lot at some point to understand how investors think, is that, especially VC investors in very early rounds, seed, pre-seed, and such, they will miss 9 out of 10 investments. So the 10th one needs to make them 100x. So for each investment they make, they're thinking, how can this become 100x of what I'm putting in there?
Yeah.
If you can't get them if you can't convince them that it's possible, you're probably not going to get that money.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that leads up to the other point about be prepared for a lot of rejection.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. 100%. It all plays together. But I think this is kind of the metric that as a founder took me longest to figure out, that they're not looking at 10x. 10x is nice. If every of their investments did 10x, they'd be super rich. But ultimately, that's not what they're after. They're after 100x because they understand really well that most of their investments will not make it to even 1x.
Wow. Okay, that is a very new insight. I always thought 10x, 15x, they're more than happy to invest. Wow, 100x. Okay.
Later stages, yes, but early on.
I see. So apart from that, are there any other pitfalls that you would recommend people to look out for when pitching to investors? Like, apart from being prepared with all the different statistics, is there anything else that you might want to recommend to avoid?
I've seen competition research. I've seen people pitching something and then being asked, "What about this? Aren't they doing the same?" And it's like, "Oh, let me Google them." It's like, no, you're not getting that money.
Yeah.
That's too late. So competition research, obviously, but it's the whole market research, right? It's like you need.
Right.
And Raymond said something to that effect, right? But this is kind of a instant deal breaker, right? If
Yeah.
you don't know who you're up against, then you don't know enough.
Yeah. And maybe one thing I can add is you got to start building those relationships early. Like, you can attend events, you can follow them on LinkedIn and Twitter and stuff. You got to know them like a while back. Like, if you are looking to fundraise, and only then you start to reach out to them. It's not impossible, but I think, pre-COVID days, you can always find, these VCs and investors at events and stuff. That's, I think, one of the best way to find them. But now, maybe just find them online. Yeah.
And even if you're not necessarily 100, that's excellent advice, by the way. This is something that you can also do now, right? You can always, even if you're fundraising for an early round, you can already reach out to investors that will not invest, right? Yeah. You're doing a pre-seed, but you reach out to a few investors that you would like to have in a Series A. You tell them about your business. You say, hey, look, just let's get acquainted. Let me tell you for half an hour. I'm not going to steal much of your time. Half an hour, what we're doing here. They're going to be like, okay, that's interesting. Let me know next time when you raise, and then. By that time you come around, they have thought about your business. You can, in best case, show them that you fit your goals, and then it's much easier for them to say, "Hey, wait a minute! I've been following this guy for a year, or 2 years, and they've been delivering on what they've been promising. So what they promise me now, they'll deliver as well. Let's go."
Wow, that's good advice. Yeah, reach out to them early. I mean, there's no harm in it anyway. Just a 30-minute chat session over coffee. That's so good, so good. All right, I'm aware of time, so I think I'm going to go to the next part. Again, a lot of people have asked this, but I believe it's just because of the demographics of the people. Constantine, maybe you might want to take this, which is also a very similar question that was asked by Srinath earlier, which is if they're a foreigner, what is the best way for them to set up a company in Singapore?
Yeah. Before answering that question, I would also say a couple of words. Why Singapore? I think this is also quite helpful because
this is the next part. Like why? Yeah, what's the benefit of Singapore?
For some people, that's a question mark, right? Because Singapore is, one might say, oh, it's not so big. There's Indonesia that's huge. I think the beauty of Singapore is something that I personally believe in very very much, is the ability to iterate quickly. Singapore. Advantage is the fact that it's so small. The fact that if you need to meet someone, you can meet them in 20 minutes, half hour, wherever you are on the island, right? So this is COVID has not helped here, but still, the fact that you can meet a lot of people that can help you, mentors, investors, potential clients, potential suppliers, and they're all here, they're all nearby, gives you the opportunity to iterate much faster on your ideas, much faster on your product, much faster on your go-to-market. And at the same time, I think because everyone is so fast is iterating, the infrastructure here is so good. I'm not meaning the roads and whatnot. That's a given, but also infrastructure in the sense of that there are other startups you can partner with very quickly. You can grow very quickly through those partnerships, and everyone will pick up that phone and talk to you and ask you and give you their answer very quickly. So that quick iteration helps you build whatever you have as a vision into a product, and that helps you then to go out of Singapore and other markets around the region, around the world even. I mean, for us in Osome, we went to Hong Kong and the UK next. So that was clearly, something that we iterated on in Singapore many times before we ventured outside. And it must be, or in my view, it is much harder to do in markets that are bigger, that are maybe not as homogenic, I think, as Singapore is. And then you can go and adapt to those markets, and you will have to adapt. But I think starting in one simple, quick turnaround market is extremely beneficial. And I think the question was how to set up.
How to set up a company in Singapore. If you're a foreigner or you've got foreign business, you want to come to Singapore, how are you going to do it?
Generally, I think, frankly, it's not that hard, right? I think the beauty of Singapore as well is, unlike in other countries, and I've set up entities across the region here, you can get your company up and running in a day or two. You can get a digital bank account in a day or two without having to travel to Singapore. So this is really something where, services like ours, help to get things going really quickly, and for very reasonable cost. You don't have to go to a bunch of lawyers to figure complicated things out. You just come, you'll run through what's your business. Here are my documents. What's the name? Let's go, and then you start running.
Yeah, thanks, Konstantin. Raymond, got any thoughts on this? Any thoughts on it, like why Singapore? If you've got anything to add on?
Yeah, I think along the same lines, right? It's the ease of setting up. I think the regulations are very favorable for companies to base out of here. I mean, one point about Singapore being small, I think I like to think about the startup community a lot of times, and I think the community density that matters. So like if you go to like One North area where our office is based, right? Like there's so many startups that you bumped into people that you are friends with, or you are in the same ecosystem, and there's so many co-working space that you can also use that as an opportunity to really meet people. And I think that's that's something that don't happen in a lot of other places. So I think that's a good additional thing that you can look at. And I think the other thing is fundraising. If you're looking to fundraise, Singapore is probably where a lot of these regional headquarters of companies, a lot of investors are here. So that's also one of the other reasons, right?
I find though this last bit has changed over the last 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Everyone's investing over Zoom anyways, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Raymond, I like what you shared about like the startup community. But just a quick question for those who are foreigners and right now currently COVID, while things have eased up a little bit, it is still tricky to travel around. So any advice for foreigners who wants to join the startup community but still unable to come to Singapore physically still to attend events, to meet people, anything you can recommend for them?
It's not the best, but online is, it works. We have to do everything online. So there are still, multiple startup events, even like something like this, you can network with other people. I think those are still very beneficial. Of course, it's a bit harder to build relationships, but it's not impossible, right? You can join events, you can join hackathons. So my team runs Startup Weekend in Singapore, and these are open now. Like most countries, they have Startup Weekends. It's open to anyone to join. So you can always test your idea out there, meet co-founders, meet mentors. Those are good environment to really meet people while you can't really do it in person. But like what you say, things are opening up. So hopefully there's more opportunities to do small gatherings, go have a dinner once in a while. And hopefully we can do that soon.
Yeah, I can add that,
Yes,
it's
please.
hard.
Yes, please.
It is hard.
Yeah.
But that's how startups are. It's hard. It's not easy every time that you do it, right? And it's okay that it's hard.
Yep.
Wow. Thanks, Ruben. Again, for those who are just watching us on YouTube after this in this recording and all that, again, online events are available. Ruben's organizing a lot of great ones. Can join him, and I believe you'll benefit a lot from it. Okay, again, we are reaching the end, all right, and we have so many questions to ask, but yet at the same time on the floor, I'm seeing a lot of good questions. So I'm just going to go over to the floor now and just to answer some questions that they have asked. I'm just going to go through a real quick. Traditional banks versus online financial institutions. What is best and why? Are there any insights to this? Any thoughts?
Frankly, it's good to start with the fintechs. It's faster, it's easier. They tend not to want to send you checkbooks even though you don't have an address. Stuff like that. It just makes it just easy to get going. Virtual cards and whatnot, all those services. Excuse me. Sometimes I do get investors, especially when they come from outside the region, to ask, hey, can I really transfer that money to that particular fintech? I've never heard of that, right? Do you have a proper bank? So eventually you will want to have a proper bank. I think ultimately it's both. I think the fintechs will make your life easier. The banks will make your fundraising a little easier. So ultimately you need both.
Thanks. That's good. Fintech for faster, just to getting started, and along the way, the local banks can come in because just generally take a little bit longer. I do hope that answers your question. The next one was something that we talked about earlier about mentorship. So the question by Will, I'm just going to read word for word. Generally, what perception might mentors have if the aspiring entrepreneur who approaches them does not have the proper academic background, such as not having the proper degree or diploma or much work experience? Would they be very much less likely to engage a person, or would they still be open for discussions and for them to approach them? I think this is a good question. Ruben, do you have any thoughts on this?
Why do they need to know that? Right, like you present yourself as somebody that knows your field, your market. You've done your research. There's no reason why they look you up on LinkedIn or somewhere and find out, oh, this guy doesn't have a degree, or this guy just 20 years old, I'm not going to talk to him. Nah, I think it doesn't work that way. It's really about how you approach them. Of course, don't stalk them. Don't be creepy. But if you are adding value to them, if you network in a correct manner, there's no reason why they would really care about this kind of stuff, right?
Plenty of people with good degrees who failed miserably.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks. So with that being said, so it all boils down to the most likely reason for rejection is probably because number one, investor is not interested, or two, probably like what both of you guys shared just now, probably your research has not been done properly and they don't see potential in the company as of yet. Would that be correct?
Yeah. I mean, they get tons of outreach every day, right? Like
That
you
is
need
true.
to stand out. You need to. It's sometimes not personal. It's just humanly impossible to like entertain everyone.
Mhm.
Like even like reply to all the LinkedIn message or whatnot they receive. So I think trying out different ways to reach out to them, to investors, to mentors, are all very important. But don't take things personally if they don't get back to you, because it's just the nature of how things are structured currently. Yeah.
One piece of advice that I personally, I figured out was that think of your kind of first engagement a little bit as a TikTok video, right? If you are not interested in within the first second, your conversion rate starts dropping very quickly, right? So make sure that whatever your hook is, whatever gets them to read the rest of your message or listen to the rest of your introduction is something that brings value to them or has potential to bring value to them, is interesting to them, right? Yeah. That's actually not as hard as you think. Either you have a product that's very special and you have a way of showing that, or do a little bit of research about this person. Understand what they care about. If this person cares about clean tech, then maybe your first sentence should include the word clean tech, right? If the person cares about, I don't know, something else, then that may be, part of that trigger. If you don't get them to listen to you after 1-2 sentences because they were boring, not related to, they're all human as well, right? And no matter how much time and effort you spend kind of becoming like so focused on the idea, no. They're all human as well. If you don't get their attention instantly, you'll probably not going to get it back.
That's good. That's good. Thanks for sharing. The next question we have by Joyce. What are the pros and cons of self-funding versus seeking funding? Raymond, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, some ideas you can't go ahead without raising funding because it's just impossible. Markets that are highly competitive, or things, ideas where speed of execution is very important. You probably need a lot of resources to really scale. So that's a given. You don't have much of a choice. But if you do have a choice, obviously, keeping more of a company is better, or delaying raising funding is better, because you get to keep more of the company as a founder. You get to raise at better terms once you have proven that your company, you have done the proof of concept, you have validated the idea. The risk is lower for the investor, and that actually means that they will invest at better valuations for you, not for them, right? So I think those are a few things to consider. But it's really very different from company to company. Some companies, you can run it very leanly and get to profitability quickly, and that's obviously the best. There are companies like, I think MailChimp, is it? I think they almost didn't raise any funding until IPO or whatever. So there are ideas that definitely could just launch and get to profitability really quickly. Yeah.
I'd add maybe that I like colorful images, so I think funding is a little bit like rocket fuel, right? You set off with the rocket faster if you get funding.
Yes.
That entails two things. If you miscalculate it, the rocket might just blow up. If you don't fill enough rocket fuel while you fly, because that's how startups work, you don't get all the funding that you need from the get-go, you'll crash down to earth. So it is loading up with risk. It's loading up your company with huge amounts of risks, which, from my finance degree coming through, the risk reward thing, this is what it is, right? It has the potential to create reward. Having said that, what Raymond said regarding giving up too much of your company is true here as well. So it's a multi-dimensional problem to solve. So
and most of the time, you don't have much of a choice. Once you start the path, it's
exactly. Yeah, you're path dependent. In the rocket, if you're sitting in the rocket, you can't just say, okay, now I'm becoming a pro. No, that's how it is. Now you're flying or you're dying, right?
Wow, so good, so good. Love the rocket fuel analogy, Konstantin. Thanks for sharing that. The next question by Ray, I think this is a really good question. What are some essential things to do to overcome pressure for brainstorming business ideas?
Sorry, pressure for brainstorming.
Brainstorming business ideas.
I
believe this is more like coming up with brainstorming good business ideas.
Okay.
So what are pressures?
Good ideas, right? Just don't judge, right? Like any idea is an idea. I think that's the point about ideation. When you're coming up with ideas, it always sounds stupid sometimes, right? Even good ideas can sound very stupid. So I think it's really about not suspending judgment when you're coming up with ideas, and then evaluating them based on your the framework that you have, right? Let's say most important thing is whether you have the skill set to launch it. Then you look at that, right? But first, before you start doing that, just write it down.
Oh, so good. Yeah, no idea is a bad idea. You just write it down and just see how you can explore again. So good. Next one, I think is a quick one by Vishnu Priya. How do you conduct a proper market research? Is there like a checklist or something? I believe, Cons, you shared a little bit more about this.
I think what I said before, right? You got to understand the market size. You got to understand who are the buyers, who are the competitors. That's regulatory limitations sometimes, but generally that's really there's no textbook example, right? It depends on the market very much. It depends on, ultimately you want to answer the questions, how big is it, how much in dollars usually that helps, and who else is playing there, and why can I be successful if they cannot.
And I think there's one thing to note. It's good to have a balance, right? Like you don't want to be just continuously trying to do research. You're not a research company. So once you're done with your basic market research, you don't need to be like 0.01% precise, right? As long as you roughly know what the market size is, you have done your research, you are in the industry, go and test it out. You'll learn new things as you speak to your customers. You try to launch something, your customers will tell you stuff.
If usually the outcome should be somewhere like an outcome could be something 1 to 10 billion. That could be an outcome, right? Precise enough. It's enough to go.
That's how it's a big market, right?
Yeah, and if it's 1 billion, it's nice. If it's 10 billion, it's very nice.
It's good. Okay, we're running short of time, but I'm just trying to see, just trying to clear as many questions as we can. The next one, what are some best ways to test a business idea? Any tips on like a good way to test a business idea?
Yeah, so just launch, man. like just build an MVP and launch. And yeah, I think this one, some people are more interested in launching like when they have a more proper product. But obviously, if you're doing certain things like medical related or certain industries where lives are at stake, be more careful. But in general, I think at least 90 or more percentage of ideas, you can launch something that's MVP, that's simple, that's you just get it into your hands of your customers to test it. I think it's the iterative process that will really get things moving, and the faster you have that loop, the faster your idea or your business will launch and become successful.
And depending on the business, especially if you're in, say, B2B, go find a buyer.
Yeah.
don't even start with the product sometimes. Yeah. Just go find a buyer. Someone's like, yeah, I'm gonna buy that, and like, okay, and now I'm running and build it. And that's okay. If you take half a year to get your first buyer, then that's scary.
Yeah.
If you get the first buyer on the first day, then you're onto something.
Wow.
Again, nothing is 100%, but this is a good rule of thumb.
That's good. Okay. Next question again. Do you have any advice on how to differentiate yourself from your competitors in a highly competitive industry? So you're launching a startup in a highly competitive industry. What are some ways in which you can differentiate yourself then?
I would say this is exactly what you need to come up with. Exactly.
That's the job of the founder.
This is. If you have that, if I had that, I wouldn't tell you. But if you have that, then you're onto something, right?
Yeah, for sure. Correct.
Right. That is true, actually. That is so true.
And
okay.
And if you are familiar with the lean canvas, right, that's the unfair advantage box, right? Yeah.
Yep. Okay. More or less the questions that we have to answer is here. Okay, I understand on the ground there are a few questions coming up about EP and all that, but I think those will be slightly tricky to answer in this webinar. So for like Monica, VT, we are keeping track of these questions, and the Osome team will reach out to you separately regarding these questions, all right, just to so that we can better tailor our answers and just find out really what you're looking for, just so that we can serve you better as well with this case, right? So with that, any more questions coming in? We still have about like 2-3 minutes before we end the webinar. The questions are popping in. All right. If not, then I think that should. Okay, I think someone's still typing. All right. If not, ladies and gentlemen, I think we will just end the webinar here. We are 5 minutes ahead of time. But again, if you have any further questions, please feel free to drop us an email. Drop us an email at Osome, and to Raymond also. More than happy to assist you with this. What's going to happen at the end of this webinar, right? There will be an email sent to you with an email for Osome if you have any questions, and an email for Raymond, right? If you have any startup inquiries or you are looking to launch a startup and you need help, right? Raymond is the person to reach out to, right? As you can tell from his sharing earlier, great sharing, great insights, lots of ideas, lots of different ways and and just communities that can just be there to help you launch and build your startup. All right. After you've launched and built a startup, you've got a great business idea and you don't know how to do it, right? Or if you're a foreigner, want to come to Singapore, don't know how to start a business, Osome is the place for you. Like what Constantine has mentioned, right? We are super fast free, we're digital. You don't have to fly to Singapore. Everything's done at the comfort of your own home. We cover incorporation to the regulations, corporate secretary till accounting. Even if you want to start your own e-commerce business, we have the specialized accountants for you to make sure your entire experience is smooth and fast free. And that is what at Osome we pride ourselves in: quick speed and fast free service to each and every single one of our clients. All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again. Okay, yes, Pushka, yes, we will share the recording. At the end, in the email, the recording will be shared with you as well. If not, you can check out our YouTube account. The video will be up on YouTube by the end of this month. Right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, 4 minutes to the end of to 5 p.m. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and we wish you a great evening ahead. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Constantine.
Thank you, Raymond, for
appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.